Hi, welcome back to Not Ready for Bondi Role-Playing. And this is our second video. So we have previously established here's how to make some wooden floors. The next thing you need for a house is some walls. So I am super lazy and I am not all that good of a draftsman. I apologize to my teachers in theater tech back in the day, but I would much rather buy a package of these which are already cut for me for a couple of bucks than spend the amount of time that it would take to measure out and cut out every single one of these. Plus, having these shapes right here means that I know I've always got the same thickness of cardboard to work with, which is also really, really nice. So you may notice these little 3D clips that are printed in the corners. I'm still figuring out which of those patterns that I like the best. But in my experimentation with figuring out how to make different rooms, different sizes of rooms go together, I discovered that what is one thickness of a piece of corrugated cardboard actually takes two thicknesses of this chipboard really quite nicely. And so one of the things that enables is making different size rooms with different wall coverings really, really easy, as long as you don't glue them in there and just set them in here instead. So at the moment, this is a fairly a larger building, but we can very easily say, nope, that is going to be a smaller building instead, and then here is your outdoors piece of grass. But in order to be able to be that flexible in terms of what sizes of walls that you need, it helps to only decorate one side of your piece of cardboard and then sandwich two of them together so that you can, for example, let's say this is no longer outdoors, this is going to be a fancy ballroom instead. So let's say that we have got this fancy piece of floor and some different walls, and then you just set up your array by setting them in place, and you're good to go. And that was what, maybe 10 seconds. So you can change around your terrain fairly easily by just painting one side, or in this case, wallpapering one side, and moving things in and out of the scene as you need them. So in order to make this work, I have basically taken my 4x6s and taken advantage of the fact that 10 feet is 2 inches, and 2 inches goes into 4x6 in either direction. So for a long wall, I cut my 4x6 in half this way. For my short wall, I cut my 4x6 in half, or in thirds, this way. And then you can see possibly the edge over here where all of these pieces of fancy trim came from the other side of this piece of scrapbooking paper that I have shamelessly cannibalized for the sake of making wallpaper that is basically cut, paste, and go. So this is one of the pieces of scrapbooking paper that I found. This is another. I have, a reasonable array that we found fairly cheap at our local resale store. And then there's also quite a lot of it that you can find on Etsy that you can print for yourself. This is just an array of riches that I have not yet had the time to go through by browsing for different sources of paper and figuring out which patterns that I want and that sort of thing. But fortunately, wallboard is cheap and this method is fast. So I will show you next how to put the different panels together. Pause. All right, so the very first set of walls that I did, I basically took your friendly neighborhood Mod Podge and got the worst white paint I could come up with so that it has lots of chunks and knots and bubbles in it. And I took the worst brush ever, which we remember from the popsicle stick video, and just sort of splodged it all over the place so that you got this rough texture. And at the time I had not figured out that I would want to have different textures on different sides, so these are two-sided, which I actually would not recommend at this point because Mod Podge is also sticky, and so if you leave it attached to something else for too long, they might start sticking together in ways that you don't like. So my current recommendation is do one side, leave the other blank, and then you can put two of them together inside one of your clips. So when I was working out where I wanted all of these decorative pieces to go, I pre-cut all of the pieces of tag board, and then I laid them down to mark, all right, start cutting here, stop cutting here, before doing the actual cutting. After I have cut all the pieces out, the next thing I did was I would turn them over and make sure that I had not cut them so that there was overhang. Instead, I made sure to trim each one to match its particular square if there was an overlap, because I know the edges are going to be the places that get worn the most if they go in and out of clips like that. So I will put my Mod Podge on the cardboard instead of on the paper, because this is going to go really curly really fast the moment it gets damp, whereas this has got a little bit more heft to it, so it will hold up to getting damp a little bit better. I dip my little foam brush here. I go like this. Try to make sure that I get all the way up to the corners. I am now working on parchment paper instead of on newspaper, because I want to make sure that anything that gets stick down just peels right up. I did one of these on newspaper. It was a bad idea because the Mod Podge made the newspaper stick, and then everything went like unfortunate. So we have got our cut piece of wood. We have got our Mod Podge. Just sort of lay it down as carefully as I can here. Run your fingers over it, and you're done with your next panel. So I've gone through why I would like to have them reversible. I love how fast and easy this is. I love how much different decor you can put together in a pretty short amount of time. So here we are with Not Ready for Bond Day. Thank you very much. Signing off till next time. So, Appendix A, how do you store all these handily shaped 4x6 pieces of material? Well, it turns out that 4x6 is also a popular note card size, and so they make nice little boxes that are already shaped and sized for containing stuff of exactly this nature. So I have got my Mod Podge version here. I am using, again, pieces of parchment to make sure that the Mod Podge does not stick together between the layers, and I just can file my pieces of terrain in a fairly space-effective organization method. So I might eventually look for a smaller one to hold the walls, but for the moment they just go right in there too.